In the autumn of 1888, a shadow fell over London's Whitechapel district, a phantom who murdered at least 5 women, leaving behind a legacy of terror and a mystery that we're still trying to solve over a century later. We all know the name, Jack the Ripper. But what if the story we all think we know is wrong? What if the real story isn't just about a monster, but about the lives he shattered and the clues that were hiding in plain sight? 1. The first victim's world of poverty. When we think of the Ripper's victims, it's easy to see them as just a list of names, defined only by their brutal deaths. But they were individuals with full, complicated and often heartbreaking lives. Let's start with the woman considered the first of the canonical 5, Mary Ann Polly Nichols. Her story is a powerful look into the brutal reality of Victorian poverty. Polly was a mother of 5. At one point, her family even lived in the new Peabody buildings, a respectable housing project for London's working families. But her life took a sharp turn after separating from her husband and struggling with alcoholism. In the years before her death, Polly was in a constant battle for survival, cycling in and out of the dreaded workhouses, grim institutions that offered a bed and food for hard labour. Early in 1888, after being found sleeping on the streets in Trafalgar Square, she briefly found a job as a servant, even writing to her father that she was in a grand place. But the job didn't last. On the night of her murder, she was turned away from a lodging house because she didn't have the 4pence for a bed. When her body was found, all she had with her was a comb, a handkerchief, and a small broken piece of a mirror. It's a detail that paints a devastating picture of a woman who had almost nothing left in the world before her life was stolen. 2. The Ripper's actual first victim? The official story counts 5 victims, the canonical 5. But what if the Ripper's reign of terror started earlier? This brings us to fact number 2. Many people at the time, including some police officials, believed the first victim wasn't Polly Nichols at all. It was a woman named Martha Tabram. Martha was murdered on August 7th, 1888, just weeks before Polly Nichols. She was found on a dark staircase, having been stabbed a horrifying 39 times. The frenzy of the attack shocked London, but the method made police hesitate to link it to the Ripper. Martha was stabbed, not slashed across the throat, and her body wasn't mutilated in the same way as the later victims. The doctor who examined her suggested 2 different weapons were used, possibly one being a bayonet, which first led police to suspect a soldier. However, the location in Whitechapel and the sheer ferocity of the attack were too similar to ignore. Some investigators close to the case came to believe Martha Tabram was the killer's first victim, suggesting his brutal methods were still evolving. Including Martha in the timeline complicates everything and shows that even the police were dealing with a terrifying and developing pattern of violence. 3. A victim's chilling final words. The night of September 30th, 1888 was one of unprecedented horror, cementing the Ripper legend forever. It's known as the double event. 2 murders in a single hour. The first victim was Elizabeth Stride, the second was Catherine Eddowes. And it's Catherine's story that gives us our 3rd fact. Just hours before her death, she was released from a police station. Earlier that day, Catherine had been arrested for public drunkenness and was held in a cell at Bishopsgate Police Station to sober up. Around 1 a.m, the desk sergeant decided she was sober enough to go. As she was leaving, he told her to pull the door to, and she replied, "All right, good night, old cock." It's one of the last things she's known to have said. According to legend, her partner John Kelly had earlier warned her about the killer stalking Whitechapel, but this story isn't confirmed in official records. What is certain is that just 45 minutes after walking out of that police station, her terribly mutilated body was discovered in Mitre Square. Her kidney and uterus had been removed. It's a haunting reminder of the simple, terrible fact that no one in Whitechapel was truly safe. 4. The final victim's mysterious past. The Ripper's 5th and final canonical victim, Mary Jane Kelly, was different from the others. She was younger, just 25, and was murdered indoors in her small room at 13 Miller's Court. This gave the killer time to perform his most horrific mutilations, leaving a crime scene that shocked even hardened police officers. But our 4th fact isn't about her death. It's about the mysteries of her life, hinted at by a tattoo on her arm. Mary Jane Kelly was an enigma. Friends described her as attractive and lively, but her past was a mix of conflicting stories. She claimed she was from Ireland and had come to London after a short marriage to a Welsh coal miner. But she also had a tattoo on her forearm with the initials TC. This is thought to have stood for Thomas Conway, a soldier she may have lived with. There were even unconfirmed stories that they had children together, a life very different from the one she was living in London. She also told friends she had once worked in a high-class brothel in London's West End before her life spiralled down into the poverty of Spitalfields. Unlike the other victims, who were in their 40s with long histories of poverty, Mary Jane's decline seemed to have been more recent. She was a woman who had known different lives before her final, tragic chapter in a squalid Whitechapel room. The tattoo was a permanent mark of a past we can never fully know, a silent clue to a life far more complex than the label Victim 5. The From Hell letter and a human kidney. The Ripper case was a media storm, and with that came a flood of letters sent to police and newspapers from people claiming to be the killer. Most were obvious fakes, but one letter stands apart not just for its terrifying tone, but for the gruesome package it came with. Our fifth fact. A man named George Lusk, president of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, received a letter that began with the words "From Hell," along with half of a preserved human kidney. The Whitechapel Vigilance Committee was a group of local citizens who patrolled the streets and pushed the police to do more to catch the killer. On October 16, 1888, Lusk received a small box in the mail. Inside was the letter, scrawled and semi-literate, and a piece of a human kidney preserved in spirits. The letter taunted him. "Saw, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you to the piece I fried and ate. It was very nice." It was signed, "Catch me when you can." This was terrifyingly specific. Catherine Eddowes, killed just weeks earlier, had her left kidney removed. Lusk was initially convinced it was a sick prank, but was persuaded to take it to the authorities. Doctors confirmed the kidney was human, from the left side, and belonged to someone who had Bright's disease, a kidney ailment Catherine Eddowes was known to have. While its authenticity is still debated, the From Hell letter remains the most chilling and credible piece of correspondence believed to be from the killer himself. 6. The vanishing graffito. In the chaotic hours after the double event, police were desperate for any clue, and for a moment they thought they had one. Our sixth fact is about a cryptic message scrawled in chalk near one of the crime scenes, a clue that was deliberately erased before it could be properly examined. In the early hours of September 30th, a short walk from where Catherine Eddowes' body lay, a constable discovered a piece of her blood-soaked apron in a doorway on Goulston Street. On the brick wall above it was a message. The exact wording is disputed, but it was something like, "The yous are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." This was an explosive message in a neighbourhood with a large Jewish immigrant population and simmering anti-Semitic tensions. The City of London Police wanted to photograph the message, seeing it as a vital clue. But the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Charles Warren, arrived and made a controversial call. Fearing the message would spark riots in the morning, he ordered it to be washed off the wall immediately. Was this a genuine message from the killer trying to misdirect the police? An attempt to incite violence? Or was it completely unrelated? Because of Warren's decision, we'll never know. The Goulston Street graffito remains one of the most frustrating what-ifs in the entire case, a clue sacrificed for public order. 7. The witness who became a suspect. Sometimes the most overlooked people in a crime story turn out to be the most interesting. For over a century, a man named Charles Cross was remembered simply as the person who discovered the body of the first canonical victim, Polly Nichols. But modern research has revealed a stunning fact. The man who called himself Charles Cross was using a false name, and his actions that morning are suspicious enough to make him a compelling suspect. The man's real name was Charles Allen Lechmere. He used his stepfather's surname, Cross, when he talked to police at the scene and at the inquest. This lie alone is enough to raise suspicion, but the timeline of his discovery is what really fuels the theory. Lechmere was a delivery driver who claimed he found Polly's body on his way to work around 3:40 a.m. However, analysis of his route and schedule suggests he was running late for his job. Why would a man late for work stop to investigate a dark shape in a gateway? The theory is that Lechmere wasn't discovering a body, he was interrupted moments after creating one. Another witness arrived right after him, and some researchers argue that this witness came upon Lechmere crouched over the body. His route to work also passed near the locations of several other murders. While there's no definitive proof, the idea that the first witness was actually the killer hiding in plain sight has turned Charles Lechmere from a footnote into a major modern suspect. 8. The jilted lover. When investigating a murder, police often look at those closest to the victim. This brings us to our 8th fact and another top suspect. Joseph Barnett, the on-again, off-again partner of the final victim, Mary Jane Kelly. He was a man with a plausible motive, deep knowledge of the area, and a direct connection that set him apart from almost every other suspect. Joseph Barnett was a fish porter who lived with Mary Kelly in her room at 13 Miller's Court. By all accounts, he was deeply in love with her, but their relationship was rocky. Barnett lost his job, and to make ends meet, Mary went back to prostitution, which was a major source of conflict between them. Just over a week before her murder, they had a huge fight that ended with Barnett moving out. He still visited her, but the tension was still there. The theory, first proposed in the 1970s, is that Barnett was driven by a twisted mix of love and jealousy. He started murdering other women in Whitechapel in a horrific attempt to scare Mary Kelly off the streets and force her to come back to him. When that failed, his rage and obsession boiled over, culminating in the brutal murder of Mary herself. He fit some eyewitness descriptions, and as her recent partner, he knew the alleys of Whitechapel like the back of his hand. Inspector Aberline questioned Barnett for 4 hours but eventually cleared him. Still, the powerful motive of a scorned lover keeps Joseph Barnett high on the list of credible Ripper suspects. 9. The Polish barber and the DNA shawl. For over a century, the Ripper's identity has been pure speculation. But recently, a bombshell. DNA evidence had allegedly identified the killer. Our 9th fact explores the case against Aaron Kosminski, a Polish barber and a prime police suspect at the time, whose name was thrown back into the spotlight by a very controversial piece of evidence. Aaron Kosminski was a Polish-Jewish immigrant who worked as a hairdresser in Whitechapel. He suffered from severe mental illness and was known to have a hatred of women and strong homicidal tendencies, according to an 1894 police memo that named him as a major suspect. He was eventually committed to an asylum, where he died. The case against him was circumstantial until 2014, when an author bought a silk shawl said to have been found near the body of Catherine Eddowes. He hired scientists to analyse stains on it. The results, published in 2019, claimed to have found mitochondrial DNA, matching both a living descendant of Catherine Eddowes and a living relative of Aaron Kosminski. It was hailed as the solution to one of history's greatest murder mysteries. However, the claim is drowning in controversy. Ripper experts immediately questioned the shawl's origin. There's no official record of it being collected from the crime scene, meaning it could have been contaminated over the last century. Critics also pointed out major flaws in the genetic analysis, noting that the type of DNA match found could be common to a large portion of the European population. The scientific community has not accepted the findings as definitive proof. Kosminski remains a compelling suspect, but the DNA proof is far from the smoking gun everyone had hoped for. 10. The Alice in Wonderland connection. The Jack the Ripper case has attracted countless theories, from the plausible to the bizarre. And none is more bizarre than our 10th fact. The accusation that the killer was none other than Lewis Carroll, the beloved author of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. This wild theory was proposed in a 1996 book by an author named Richard Wallace. The entire accusation is based on the claim that Charles Dodgson, Carroll's real name, hid confessions in his writing through complex anagrams. Wallace argued that by rearranging the letters in Carroll's poems, you could spell out messages describing the murders. The theory even suggested that Dodgson's personal diaries provided another clue, claiming that he switched from his usual purple ink to black ink on the days of the Ripper murders. This, combined with the anagrams, was presented as proof of his guilt. Unsurprisingly, this theory is not taken seriously by any credible historian. The anagram method is deeply flawed. You can rearrange letters to create almost any message you want. Plus, Carroll's whereabouts on the dates of the murders often place him far from London. The accusation against Lewis Carroll is a perfect example of the strange and wild speculation the Ripper case inspires. A mystery so profound it can even cast a dark, if ridiculous, shadow on the whimsical world of Wonderland. Conclusion. From the forgotten lives of the victims to jilted lovers and famous authors, the search for Jack the Ripper has taken us down 100 different roads. Each fact reveals another layer of a puzzle that remains stubbornly incomplete. The 5 women, Polly, Annie, Elizabeth, Catherine, and Mary Jane, were more than just victims. They were mothers, daughters, and wives whose lives were shaped by the brutal realities of Victorian London before being cut short by an unknown hand. The mystery endures not just because of the killer's savagery, but because it holds a mirror up to the society that allowed him to hunt in its darkest corners. The Ripper was never caught, his identity lost to time, leaving us with a chilling question that still echoes today. Who was he? Who do you think Jack the Ripper was? Let us know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching.